Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. This is going to be a bit of a discussion video about size, and specifically I want to talk about small knives and why overall I don't love them, even though I can recognize that there are some very distinctive benefits to a small knife. Okay, now recently I asked you guys what size you prefer to carry, and a number of you replied in the comments on that video pointing out that you guys like around 3.5 inches. That was the most common response. A few of you said like 3.25 to 4 inches, or some of you said 3.5 to 4 inches, and some of you even said 4 inches, but pretty much that 3.5 inch number was sort of the sweet spot for blade length. All right, and no one really commented about overall length or about handle size, but we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Now, before we get into all of that stuff, I do want to ask you guys, if you do carry a small light knife like this, and I'm sure some of you do you carry it as your primary blade, or do you carry it as a secondary blade, or maybe you have some other purpose for it, okay? If you own some of these smaller knives and really like them, are they occasional carry knives for you? Are they backup knives? What role do you find these smaller knives filling? Especially those of you who said, no, I really like a 3.5 inch blade, okay? So that's, and I will start out with that point, and that is when we talk about the benefits of a small knife, one of the things I do like is the fact that you can carry this sort of as a backup blade. If you're carrying something big or something expensive that you may not want to use in every situation, if I'm carrying, let's say, this knife around, it's a little big, it's a little, it's shiny, it can be a little costly. Maybe I don't want to use it in every situation, and so something small as a backup. If I carry this as a backup, then I'm like, well, now I'm using up an awful lot of pocket space, where something like this I can carry and really not even notice it. So that's the first thing that I can definitely see, and I wonder if others have a similar view to smaller knives like that. That's not, though, the only reason. There are good reasons to carry a small knife as your primary EDC as well. The first of which is very simply that they're small, okay? So being fairly small, that means they're not going to be too heavy. They're not going to take up a lot of space in your pocket. They're not going to be overly obtrusive in terms of, whatever other stuff you want to carry. They're not going to interfere, let's say, with whatever your EDC habits are. And especially for those of you watching from the US, where I know a number of you are, you guys can EDC a firearm, and many of you do. And I'm thinking, if you're carrying a gun and a multi-tool and a flashlight and a knife, maybe you want to save some space by, carrying a knife that's a little bit smaller, especially if you feel like some of the roles that maybe some of us would use a knife for, you've got covered with your multi-tool or something else, okay? So there's definitely the benefit of just the sheer size and convenience, right? Carrying around a knife like this is very, very easy. You can carry it, drop it in your pocket, you can clip it to your pocket, no big deal. You're not even going to know that you have it with you, all right? And that's definitely a substantial benefit that's worth considering for all of us, okay? For me, again, anyway, I'll save my rebuttals till the end, okay? So that's the first point, is just the size makes them very easy and convenient to carry around. Number two, a small knife is not usually going to upset anyone. If you're in McDonald's or the bank or somewhere else and you pull out a knife like this, not too many people are going to be concerned about it. It's so small that they're like, yeah, what harm could you do with that? Like, it's almost a keychain knife. So most people, even something like this that has a bit more of a tactical look to it, most people are still going to be fine with it because of the small size. And that can be a real benefit. We're getting ready to travel, and when we do that, and I don't know why I can't speak, I will probably at least consider the public perception of whatever knife I have with me. Especially, we're going to go to an amusement park, and we're going to be doing some sightseeing and touristy stuff. And I'll probably make sure that I have a knife on me at that time that is pretty sheeple friendly. And certainly a smaller knife is going to be more sheeple friendly than a larger one. Okay. The other aspect of this, a more concrete aspect of this, is a lot of places place limits on the size of knife you can carry. So maybe you live in a part of the world where you can only have a 3-inch blade, or where you can or even smaller. I think some places have 2-inch blade limits, okay? I can't remember whether or not the Spyderco Dragonfly applies, but it'd be pretty close, especially if they only measure to the choil. You probably only have 2 inches there. So, you know, you're pretty safe most places to carry the Dragonfly, but even some of these may be too big for certain parts of the world or certain states or certain cities. So there's the legal side of this. And one other important point is that these smaller knives are still going to get most, okay, I'm not going to suggest all, but they're still going to get most of your everyday cutting tasks done for you without too much problem. There are some tasks that I feel like a larger blade is more suited to, but honestly, you can get a lot of pretty useful stuff done with a fairly small sized knife. And so those are all, I think, worth considering, and they are all good reasons to think maybe I should carry something, you know, 3 inches or under. All right, now, after I've kind of laid out all of those reasons for you, I want to take my chance to respond and make a few points of my own, okay? So first of all, the main issue that I have with all of these knives, and I have spent some time with all of them, I've cut with them, I've measured them, I've checked out how they work. Number one, all of these are not mine. These are getting ready to be for sale. So I wanted to make sure that I had a good handle on their quality, their functionality, all that stuff, their condition in general before I put them up for sale. But I've also worked on reviews for most of these as well. And again, because of that, I wanted to get a good handle on each one. And so I have carried and tried each one of these. And I can say that overall, I don't like the way they feel in hand. Something about not having, you know, a good substantial real estate for my hand puts me off of a knife, and I just don't feel confident that I can get everything done that I might want to get done with a knife that isn't very hand filling. Okay, and here's a great example. This Spyderco Kiwi, really cool looking knife, and it even has a 4-finger grip, but that 4-finger grip it just feels like that it's very insubstantial in your hand. Okay, so that's probably the biggest thing that puts me off, is just the overall feel of the knife in hand. And you may be saying, you know, Kevin, that's pretty subjective. And I wouldn't argue with you. It is pretty subjective. But nonetheless, when I get this knife in hand, I can't feel really good about it. I feel like I'm kind of, you know, under tooled, if you will. I don't have enough tool to feel good about, you know, tackling anything that life may throw at me on that particular day. The other point here is that I sometimes feel, you know, and I have felt this even with some larger knives, that I don't have quite as much blade as I would like, okay? I've honestly never said to myself, man, I wish this blade was shorter, okay? I've never said that. I have, though, said to myself, I wish this blade were longer, and that's even with my own proclivities toward larger knives, all right? I've got a couple that, you know, a good example would be the Para 2, right? By the time you take away this choil, there's actually only, you know, a little over 3 inches of blade here. And I have thought, man, a little bit of extra blade would be appreciated. I've had that thought. I've never thought to myself when I pull out some knife, man, I wish this blade were a little bit smaller. I guess maybe you could if you were carrying a katana or something like that. You know, the Kershaw, I can't think of the name of the knife I'm testing right now. The Kershaw Camp 18, sorry. Yeah, if you pull out the Kershaw Camp 18 to open your mail, you're gonna maybe wish it had a smaller blade. But otherwise, that's not really something I've found myself concerned about. The other aspect here is that larger knives, not always, okay, but they're often a little heavier duty than smaller knives, right? They feel like, or at least I feel like, they're capable of doing a lot more than some of these guys here would be. Now, let me add a couple of other points that I think are also worth considering. You know, some of the points that we said about the small knives here can kind of be negated. So first off, being easy to carry. Well, there are lots of larger knives, such as the 0770. This isn't a larger knife. I'd say this is a medium-sized knife. The Kershaw Knockout, the American Lawman, the North Arm knives. Man, this knife really has got to be cleaned. It's really gritty and got some gunk in it. The Skaha, again, a little smaller than I like, but still a fairly medium-sized knife. But all of these are extremely lightweight and very, very easy to carry. So you can carry a larger knife and still get by with not having something that is going to upset anyone. All right, the other thing is you can find larger knives that aren't very scary looking, that aren't very tactical. Okay, this Kaiser Corto is a perfect example of that. Boker Lancer is another good example. Now, this is still a little small for me, but I don't think this knife is going to upset too many people. Most people, if you pulled this out to cut something, wouldn't bat an eyelash. I guess this one also qualifies as extremely lightweight and extremely easy to carry. So there are some exceptions that way. Now let me share one other exception with you. This knife, this is the Spyderco Sage, kind of lands in between. It's not really a small knife. It's not, I guess it's more on the end of a small knife than a large knife, but one of the rules it breaks is it is very confidence inspiring. It feels amazing in hand, every bit as good as any large knife I've handled. And so this kind of breaks the rule that I was sharing with you where most small knives, to me anyway, don't feel very good in hand. The Spyderco Dragonfly kind of breaks that rule as well, but not to the same extent that the Sage does. The Sage is, bar none, the nicest smaller sized knife that I've ever felt in hand. And so I have to give some credit that if you look around, and I'll be honest, if I lived in a part of the world where it was only legal to carry a 3-inch knife, the Sage would absolutely be my go-to knife without question. So there's my little discussion and my justification for carrying larger knives. Part of it is just subjective. They just don't feel as capable to me. Part of it is a little more objective. That is, I like to have that extra bit of blade length for various tasks that I may want it for. And I like to have that extra bit of hard useness. Okay, I know that's not a thing, but I like to carry knives that are a little more robust than most of these would be. Although I will say the Lockback Sage is pretty heavy duty, pretty well built, although I wouldn't want to carry this particular one. Okay, so there you go, guys. I'd love to hear your comments down below. What are your thoughts on all of this? Are you totally with me here? Do you think I'm completely nuts? I probably am, maybe not for this reason, but I would love to hear your feedback below nonetheless. By the way, I will put some Amazon links to some of these knives down below, especially the Mini Grip, the Dragonfly, the Sage. I absolutely love the Sage. There won't be this version. This one's not widely available, but I will throw some Amazon links down below if you're interested in picking up any of these. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.